So last month, there was a moment during Donald Trump's acceptance speech at the Republican convention that caught a lot of people by surprise. And one of them was Donald Trump himself.
Only weeks ago in Orlando, Florida, 49 wonderful Americans were savagely murdered by an Islamic terrorist. This time, the terrorist targeted LGBTQ community. No good, and we're going to stop it. As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me. And I have to say, as a Republican, it is so nice to hear you cheering for what I just said. Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers at that convention for a line about protecting gay people, and even Donald Trump acknowledging that it's not something we've heard at many Republican conventions before. And this gets to something that some political observers have taken note of in this campaign. For all of the many provocative and inflammatory comments that Trump has directed toward Mexicans, toward Muslims, toward many other minority groups, for all of that, gays seem to have been the exception. He has been largely quiet on the topic, and with that Republican convention moment serving as an exception, a notable exception. And that is an interesting backdrop for the trip that Donald Trump made just today, a few weeks after that convention moment in Cleveland. Today, Donald Trump addressing a convention of conservative evangelical pastors and their spouses. This was an event featuring no shortage of hardliners on gay issues. Also, the setting was noteworthy as well. It took place in Orlando, Florida, almost 2 months to the day since the Pulse nightclub attack in that city. Now, the conference that Trump spoke at was sponsored by the American Renewal Project. It's a group that was founded by this man.
So here we are, kill 60 million babies, red ink as far as the eye can see, homosexuals praying at the inauguration. If America gets mercy, I believe, this doesn't sound good, I think the process of mercy looks like probably car bombs in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. and Des Moines, Iowa. I think if we get mercy, the process is going to be a very painful process.
And that man you heard there is David Lane. He is warned of what he calls homosexual totalitarianism. He says it's threatening the future of the country. Now, his group is the group that sponsored the event in Florida that Donald Trump headlined today. Some of the other people who attended include Matt Staver. He denounced the memorial of victims of the Orlando massacre as, quote, homosexual love fests. A pastor from Maine was there. He preaches against what he calls militant homofascism.
Militant homofascism seeks to take over our land and make it Sodom.
And a man named David Barton, who has said that a cure won't be found for AIDS because it's God's punishment for gay people.
The Bible says if you engage in homosexuality, your body will do things that will penalize you. So if you can have a vaccine for AIDS, then you're keeping your body from penalizing you. I don't think they'll ever find a vaccine for AIDS.
Those are some of the people speaking at this conference in Florida. So why did Donald Trump, a guy who has said the opposite of what many of these people are saying, why did he speak to this group today? Well, it has to do with politics, with where the votes come from generally for a Republican candidate for president. Go back to 2004. George W. Bush got reelected that year. He got 79% of the evangelical vote. And also key there was evangelicals turned out in big numbers that year. 4 years later, 2008, John McCain got a smaller share. He got 73% of the evangelical vote. In 2012, Mitt Romney was back to 79%. Now, there is some concern in the Trump campaign and in Republican circles about support and turnout among evangelical voters this year for Donald Trump. There are evangelical leaders like Southern Baptist leader Russell Moore who've been outspoken against Trump. And there is a sense, too, that Donald Trump, who once defined himself as very pro-choice, Donald Trump who's donated to Democrats, Donald Trump who's led a lifestyle that landed him on the gossip pages in New York City for years, there's a sense that that could put him in a little bit of trouble with evangelical voters. Maybe not that they'll vote for Hillary Clinton, but that they might stay home. In the most recent NBC News SurveyMonkey weekly tracking poll, Donald Trump is losing a little bit of ground to Hillary Clinton. He's still crushing her by almost 50 points there, but the margin was a higher in an earlier poll. It was up to about 60 points in July. You see Trump was 71% there. Remember, Bush, Romney, they got 79%. That's a little work for Donald Trump to do. So the question again for Donald Trump, beyond shoring up his support with evangelicals, it's a question of turnout. It's a question of making sure they think it's worth their time, it's worth their energy to go to the polls and vote this November. Not so much will they vote for Clinton or Trump, but will they vote at all? That is the challenge for Donald Trump, and that is what brought Donald Trump to the headline-speaking role at this event today with 700 very conservative evangelical pastors and their spouses. And we should mention, given what we showed you at the top of the segment about what Donald Trump said at the Republican convention this summer, given the fact that there were so many prominent anti-gay speakers featured at this convention where Donald Trump spoke today, well, Donald Trump, he didn't say anything in his speech about those comments that they made about gay issues. He didn't echo them in any way. Again, as he has done in this campaign, he largely stayed away from it. Now, back in November, Ted Cruz, Mike Huckabee, Bobby Jindal, they all attended a similar event out in Iowa. Cruz even later said that attending it was a mistake because of the anti-gay rhetoric. But all three of them, at the time that they attended, they were knee-deep in the Republican primary. They were trying to win voters for those Iowa caucuses, base voters, Republican-base voters. Donald Trump, of course, doesn't have to worry about winning the primary anymore, but as we said, he faces that challenge of turning out skeptical evangelical voters in the fall. So it's an open question. Are evangelical supporters going to be there for Donald Trump this fall? It's an unusual challenge for a Republican. They usually have to worry about evangelicals in the spring, but not the fall. Different this year. Something to watch for.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.